Welcome back to another wonderful episode of your favorite show and ours.
The Fervent Four Show, episode
Fervent Four Show.
183.
Here we
On
are.
cue. Planes flying overhead.
Really? So those don't stop all day. Do you hear them all day?
Well, they do their thing. We always joke, man. They go out for lunch or they go out for breakfast, and then they come back. So it all depends on what time they go to start their flight and whenever they decide to come back.
We have some. I guess it's the weather military planes with the big circle thing on top of it.
Yeah.
So we got those every once in a while. I was on my run today. I saw one of those, and I was like, "Damn, that plane is really low." Several helicopters will go throughout the day. They fly pretty damn low too, but at night, because Fentress is somewhat close, it's probably like 7 to 10 o'clock. Yep, they've been practicing a lot recently, and so
I always wonder, like at the Virginia Beach Amphitheater, if the pilots, if they know if a concert's going on, and if they purposely go a little lower when they fly over the amphitheater or not, because there's times that they will scare.
have you been there when that happens?
Oh yeah, the artists will just jump because they're just not expecting it, and then all of a sudden, they're buzzing the amphitheater. But
when I was recording Anomaly, the first day we went in, and Chris Lane and I, he's the guy who did the audio for it. He was at 1701 at the time, and we were in the booth recording, and it was like every 10 minutes it kept going by, and I'm like, yo, dude, we're not gonna be able to use this. Like, I cannot record this right there because it's already hard enough. Like, you only have, I think I told you this when I was recording it before, like, you only have a small amount of time that you can actually get those words out a day, maybe 3 hours. And then once that 3 hours is up, you're done for it.
Yeah, you got to rest up those vocal cords, right?
It's crazy how you can literally talk on the phone all day, but then when you're trying to voice a book, it becomes a lot more difficult thing.
It's the sound of freedom, is what they say. Bill, our guest today, Bill Peterson, I guess he's familiar with the sound of freedom. Coming to joining us from Flying Ship Technologies. Be fun to dig in, to see what you got going on. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, you've been flying for quite some time, right?
Flying, yeah. I started flying at the age of 14. Flew off and on, and then I went. I almost got my private before I went to college. Went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and then I got distracted because it's in Daytona Beach, Florida. So had a good time down there with my friends. But I got a degree in aerospace engineering, so I was able to balance some of it, but wasn't able to finish up some of the flight school stuff.
So you've been involved with aeronautics ever since?
Yeah. And, so I've spent my career in the aerospace and defense industry. Done a whole range of different things, everything from engineering to business development, a little bit of government affairs, international strategy, a bunch of things that sound pretty complex, but as soon as you crack them open, it's a little bit. As soon as you figure it out, rather, it's not as complex as it sounds.
Okay, so like when you're on a commercial flight and you hear like certain sounds, as just a rando on a plane, I have no idea what I'm hearing, but I'm like, damn, that sounds a little like, that sounds a little suspect. That sounds a little sketch. Like, do you know at the time if something is going okay, bad? Like, yeah, it's nothing to worry about. Like, is that something fairly easy for you to recognize, or does that not really happen on commercial flights?
Yeah, well, I usually know, and it's always fun flying with somebody who doesn't know, especially with somebody that has logged a lot of hours in smaller aircraft. Because if you're flying in a Cessna 152 or 172, small airplane, very small airplane, where they've got seats in the back, but it's almost just like a two-seater with enough room for luggage in the back. You get slammed around all over the place in those little aircraft, and So turbulence, you become immune to turbulence as soon as you get into a big aircraft. I mean, when you hit a turbulence in a big plane, it is nothing like being in a little Cessna getting
Really?
slammed around. It's a lot of fun.
I don't know if I could ever become numb to turbulence. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It just,
So a little plane is a lot of turbulence, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Because I remember when I went to Japan, over a decade, 15 years ago, maybe, we were in a huge plane. On the way back, it was a double decker. On the way out, I don't know what it was, but it was huge. It was huge. And I didn't hear, like, we literally had to take the entire runway. That's how long it took the plane to get off. I didn't feel a damn thing. Like, it was the smoothest ride ever. And so maybe there is something to do with that.
It's inertia, my friend. Inertia. You get enough inertia. It's hard to move a big aircraft like that.
There you go.
Yeah. But at a little one, and the other thing with a little airplane too is you've got to practice. You've got to practice like the engine going out over and over again. That's what they do. So you'll go up, and your flight instructor will all of a sudden, you'll be having a conversation like this. The flight instructor will just all of a sudden pull the engine and shut the throttle off or throttle it way back. And you've got to practice. You've got to practice trying to figure out where to land or what to do in an emergency situation. Turn your engine back on. So
I've seen stuff like that on YouTube where people are practicing stuff like that. It's
scary.
It sounds scary.
It's frightening. Yeah, but it's fun.
What about fast fighter jets? Like the ones that are they F-18s? Is that what you're saying, Tim? That's what's around us.
my house F-22s.
All right. So a fighter jet, do those feel turbulence, or are they going so fast it doesn't matter?
Yeah, well, I've never flown one, but I imagine when you're going at, the speeds that they're going, they're not feeling a lot of turbulence at all. But I have no authority there, so
there you go. I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah.
Gosh, so is that the genesis then of Flying Ship? In terms of how did you get the idea? What's the genesis of the company?
Yeah, so I've always been sort of this, kind of an aerospace geek, just kind of always kind of geeking out over aerospace concepts and technology. And the Russians actually built these massive ground effect craft called chronoplanes. And they built one that had a greater lift capacity than one of those aircraft, Zach, that you said you were on, probably, unless you were on an A380, but they had a greater lift capacity than 747s. At the time. So the greatest lift capacity out of anything on Earth at the time. And if you Google the Caspian Sea Monster, you can see one of the more commonly known ones. So because when you're operating in what's called ground effect, when you're just above the surface, like when an airplane is coming in for a landing or about to take off, basically what's happening is there is air that is sandwiched between the wing and the ground, and it increases lift and it decreases drag, so you can increase the lift capacity. Anyways, I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole, but the Russians capitalized on this. They built these massive monstrosities that were just ahead of their time, and I was always fascinated by them. I remember seeing a documentary when I was probably 12 years old on these chronoplanes, and just thinking, why did that never come to fruition? And then it was just sort of forgotten about technology until myself and a couple other startups that came just after me started going after this technology. The Russians, essentially, the Soviet Union just ran out of money, and otherwise they probably would have really commercialized these.
Are they bigger than the C5? On par, probably.
Bigger, I think heavier lift capacity. I think we can look that up, but around the same lift capacity, if not a little bit more.
I mean, to me, man, the C5 is just one. I mean, that thing is so big in the air. I mean, I always just look in amazement. It's like, how is that thing able to fly? I mean, that thing. I mean, it's just massive. It's
so cool. And it's cool to go in there because you're like, am I in a, you're basically in a building that's turned sideways.
Yeah.
When you step in.
I mean, Zach, this thing is so big. Like they put in like fire trucks, like they'll like when they deploy forward, the military deploys forward, tanks, fire trucks, all that stuff just goes in the C5 and now the C-17.
Is that where they
so
move most of the soldiers to, in one of those?
there is a passenger area in the C5, and the thing that's interesting about that is that you're up top towards the tail of the plane and you sit backwards, so your back is to the cockpit, so it's just it's goofy from that standpoint. But yeah, back in the day when I was in the Air Force, I was able to fly a couple flights in the C5, and it's an incredible plane. But yeah, you can
According to the internet,
pass the you can play football.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's fun.
They're big.
I think I've seen some of those out at when I used to live in Ocean View. I feel like I've seen maybe one of those.
Yeah, you'll see them circling around from time to time. The C-17 is taken over. It's not as big as the C-5, but I think cargo capacity of the C-17 is a little bit larger. But same deal. Like when the president flies, all the limos and all that stuff, they just put in the back of those, in the bellies of those big cargo planes, and fly the limos to wherever they need to go.
Oh wow! Finally learned something today. I've been waiting. Thank you.
No, it's pretty cool. It's yeah. So we didn't mean to go down the C5 C-17 rabbit hole. So continue on with the Genesis, Bill.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, that is a cool aircraft, C5 and C-17s. So so continuing down the Genesis. Well, one interesting little anecdote about the Russian chronoplanes is Khrushchev used to joke that he had ships that could jump over bridges, and everybody just assumed he was drinking too much vodka. And it turns out he did. So they built these Russian chronoplanes so that they could, they were people movers, and but they ran into some technical issues. One was that they were trying to move at 300, maybe 350 miles an hour just over the ocean. So the captains or pilots, they were white knuckled operating these craft. So they messed up. They would die, and everybody else on board would die. And the other challenge they ran into is that they had a bunch of jet turbine engines in the front of the craft, and they would ingest sea spray. And if anybody knows anything about aircraft, the engines are the most expensive part of the aircraft. So they were continuously eroding and corroding the engines. So they had to throw out the most expensive part of the craft. So what I'm just thinking about this, and I was involved in some projects that were spearheading some of the autonomous systems development in the aerospace industry, and just looking at the trends towards autonomy, and looking at the electrification of aircraft and the trend towards more and more electric aircraft, and then just looking at some of the trends towards having more lighter aircraft that had used more composite materials, and just kind of plotting all of those trends in one direction, and then looking at these legacy really cool craft that took advantage of an operational window that was far more efficient than traditional aircraft. Sort of thought about it, and I mean, how it could, if you brought all of these concepts together to this legacy technology, you could essentially eliminate the risk of onboard human life, being at risk. You could dramatically increase efficiency, and you could solve a lot of the logistics issues that are facing the world economy. With all of the supply chain constraints that are happening in and around ports and fixed infrastructure. So I did kind of the opposite of what any business school teacher will tell you, that you need to identify the problem first and then determine the solution. I sort of saw this technology, this nascent technology that had great potential, and then developed the business case around why that would be able to have a tremendous impact on the logistics and transportation market.
So as we're talking about these big planes and the name of your company being the Flying Ship Technologies, how big are the aircraft that you are looking to design?
Yeah. So first off, I'll correct you, Tim. Instead of aircraft, they're technically classified as maritime vessels, and this is actually one of the keys to why they are so advantageous, because I'll call it a friendlier regulatory regime. There's an actual definition for what's called a wing and ground effect craft. It's looked at like a hovercraft because it doesn't interfere with aircraft flying aloft, right? You're only worried about ship traffic. You'll never have to worry about them dropping out of the sky on cities or playgrounds. You're only worried about the safety of mariners. So they're classified by the International Maritime Organization and international governments as maritime craft. So we're able to get to market faster. We don't have to use some of the systems that take aircraft very, very long times to be able to certify. So we can use some commercial off-the-shelf systems instead. So you asked me about the size of the aircraft, and I went off on a tangent. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try to impress Zach here quickly, because I learned this last week. So, like, with you being a maritime vessel, if you will, then that allows you that you only need a Coast Guard certification as opposed to FAA certification.
Right.
Is that
right? There's something happening on Capitol Hill right now where they're having some discussions between the Coast Guard and FAA. So they're trying to finalize what that means in terms of certificate, but it is a Coast Guard certification, not an FAA.
So the difference between like that and a drone, in that kind of case, the drones have some sort of FAA regulations that are crazy in there. Here, how high up are they flying right off the water?
Within one wingspan length. So as long as it stays underneath a wingspan length.
Okay.
It's classified.
Is that from sea level, I guess?
So some of these things are still being defined. This is sort of uncharted territory. Again, it's seen elsewhere around the world, but it's uncharted territory here in the States. So that definition is being pushed around a little bit by the two regulatory bodies I just mentioned.
And how large do you think these things will be?
So right now we've built multiple 6.5 foot models. So three 6.5 foot craft. Last week I was just out in California with members of the military doing some demos and testing with one of our craft. But we're scaling up. So and remember I said before, inertia is key for those large craft, like that A380 that you may have flown on, Zach. It was either a 747 or A380. Inertia is key for ground effect craft too. The larger you go, the more operationally efficient they are. So you can deliver more payload for a given amount of energy, and you can sustain operation under a lot rougher sea conditions. So we are looking to scale up. So we've got some initial designs that can deliver up to 6,000 pounds, 1,000 nautical miles, which kind of sounds like a lot, but you're talking about really a delivery van sized payload. So think about like that UPS truck or FedEx truck that like that size payload, being able to take that to anywhere around a coastline. So the unit economics the main selling points are it's less than a quarter of the operating cost of a comparable fixed wing aircraft, 10 times faster than anything at sea, green technology, and it's provides tens of thousands of additional access points along a coastline. So we could have a dramatic impact to regions like the Caribbean or anywhere along the coast, like the I-95 corridor. But just taking the Caribbean, for example, and Southeast Asia, you've got what's almost like a bunch of standalone cities with no interconnecting transit system except for the ocean. But in order to ship goods out to these regions, you've got two options right now. You've got air freight, which you can do right now, but it's very expensive. It's fast, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. Or you've got maritime shipping, which is it's inexpensive, but it's very slow. It can take days, weeks, or even months to get shipments for out to the islands. And for example, Amazon, from my understanding, they're having a very hard time pulling together a business case to create next day prime delivery out to any of the Caribbean islands, except for maybe some of the larger ones that already have a hub. So we can dramatically change the standard of living for people that live on those islands, because they don't really grow much on the islands. I mean, there's not a lot that's grown there. There's not a lot that's produced there. Most of them operate off of an economy that's based on tourism. So in order to sustain that, they're shipping everything in and everything out, or trash out at least.
So are you looking to move just cargo first? Will you ever look to transport humans, or are you sticking with cargo?
Yeah, we definitely want to move humans eventually, but safety is paramount. So not only do we not want the company to go under, but we're just not putting people at risk on there until it's absolutely safe. And then the other advantage of doing an unmanned system first, getting to market with that unmanned system, is you don't have to. I mean, if you remove the everything that a human needs on board, you can dramatically reduce the cost and repurpose space and power and weight for cargo. So you take the windows out, take the emergency escape hatches out, take the cockpit out, the screen, the displays out, even the air conditioning systems out, and you reuse all of that for transporting cargo. Then you can get to market faster and save money and energy moving that cargo around.
Where do you envision the humans freaking out when they see these things just close to their waterways? I'm just thinking like this thing's going at the Chesapeake, people just freaking out. Do you guys feel like there's going to be some sort of marketing push behind it, making sure that people realize that, hey, like these are safe, don't be threatened, anything like that? Like you worried about that at all? Has that come up at all?
Yeah, Zach. In fact, what's going to happen is the number of UFO sightings is going to dramatically increase as soon as we start operating these. Now, absolutely. We've partnered with some companies that are leading the way in autonomous systems, unmanned systems, and so we're integrating their we'll call them commercial off the shelf systems that they've already developed on board our craft, in order to because that's not our specialty. Our specialty is creating the craft itself and then integrating systems that have already been proven in the field to do this. So in terms of a marketing push, a marketing ploy, the way that we're doing this is we're setting up what are called some sandbox routes, in which we've got oversight there. It's a controlled environment, and we're ensuring that we've got the limited there's limited traffic in the region, and it's just a controlled space. So, and then we deploy more and more of those sandbox routes around the world. So I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but that's the answer I'm giving you.
You had mentioned you're testing it out West Coast Air Force. So is using the military, is that kind of phase one? Hope maybe you can get some federal money, some DoD money to help with the R&D, nailing everything down until you're ready to hit scale, and then go to the commercial route, or what's your, how do you plan to, what is your involvement with the military and then in the future?
Yeah, no, so we are not relying on the military. We know that we've got very strong demand signals that are coming out of the military, and we know that this has enormous applications to the military. But we've got more than $200 million worth of customer commitments and letters of intent from commercial logistics companies, including one that we announced a couple months ago, Ramps Logistics in the Caribbean. So what we're doing is we're focusing our energy on those commercial customers, and we're going to be building a 20-foot version for one of the customers in the Caribbean and starting those routes. The military will come. We're confident of that, but we just can't wait for an act of Congress, or can't wait for them to get this. There are very, very strong demand signals though coming out of them, but we just don't know when that will happen.
Right. What how is the demand then, like in the Caribbean? Are they ready for it? Like, hey, we want this yesterday, or is there still going to be like an early adopter period that you're going to have to appease to them and then continue to scale? I'm just thinking, and I guess the genesis behind that question was like 5 years ago, telemedicine was like, nah, we're not ready for it yet. But then COVID happened, and then everything accelerated. And so here I'm thinking, like, right now, like, everything is great. Hurricane season is almost over. No one's in any particular rush. But if there was like some hurricane that came through,
knock on wood.
Well, but then, I mean, it's just one of those things, I mean, like, take advantage of every opportunity, or don't waste a crisis. But if you're in a situation where there is an earthquake or a natural disaster of some kind, and you were the one way to get supplies in, that is it going to take something like that to demonstrate the capabilities that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my response is that the demand is very, very strong right now, and it's clear from the number of aircraft that are being bought for, for example, the Cessna Sky Courier and Cessna Caravans that are small air freighters, and they have a very similar cargo capacity, and they're the ones that are used right now. So now what you typically find is air freight will come into the belly of a large aircraft into some of the really big islands, like maybe Trinidad or Puerto Rico, and then it's broken down into smaller, pallet, or the pallets are taken off, and they're taken off into smaller aircraft, and then distributed around the islands, or they'll be put on ships, and they'll be brought to everywhere. So the demand for price sensitive, time sensitive cargo is huge right now. That is a multi billion dollar market. I mean, it's greater than a $100 billion market for those types of crafts. So, if you look at that market that we're targeting, there's clear demand there. Now, in terms of early adopters, we've already got companies that have signed up and said that they want to do this. So we've already got orders. We don't have a customer procurement or customer acquisition issue. We don't have a technology bottleneck. What we've got right now is a production issue. So, Is that how you were looking at
Yeah, I mean, I'm just because, gosh forbid, I don't ever want to see anything happen. But I mean, I just think it's something like Maui when people, they needed supplies in a really, really big way, and there was no way to get the supplies that they needed. But to your point, if you had big planes flying things into the Big Island, into Honolulu, then you could just take your company and then fly all the supplies needed to the people of Maui when they were trying to fight the fires.
Yeah, and one of the challenges too with big aircraft is that they're limited to runways, right? So and here on the mainland, that's not that big of a deal. There's a lot of airports around here, but when you're on an island, by almost by definition, you're very limited on space. And a lot of these smaller islands, they either have very short runways or they don't have airstrips at all. So you've got to helicopter it in, drop it in, and that's very expensive, very slow, and also very limited on the types of weather conditions. So for us, we've also built them with a beaching capability, and which is what the Russians did with their chronoplans. So we're kind of over. I've heard it described as a self-healing runway. We're always over a self-healing runway in the ocean, right? So we can always, if there's an issue, we throttle back and we touched right down on the water, and then we can taxi in. Now our smaller craft can't deal with all sort of surf conditions, but the larger ones definitely can. So we can be that first aid responder to when there is, because there will be another earthquake, there will be another tsunami, there will be another devastating hurricane, and we know that'll happen. So this is an excellent use case for being able to save lives.
I think you said at one point you were a jack of all trades. You've done a bunch of different stuff in different kind of realms. What number of business is this for you?
Oh, well, in terms of startups, this is I've done a consultancy startup, which is not a real startup. This is my number one, but we've got other team members in here that have done this before as well.
What's it been like so far? Like what's kind of the biggest lessons learned?
Oh man, loss of sleep. It's what's it been like? No, I guess it is stressful. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
No, I got one of the questions that that I'm curious from your point of view is, I mean, you are in a industry that it's capital intensive. It's going to take a long time, just by the nature of it. So, like, what are the things that you put in place, or are you thinking about putting in place? One, to keep people's attention, to keep them excited, just because, I mean, it's just the production aspects, it just takes a really, really long time. If you look at the Model 3, you look at the Cybertruck, I mean, it's like all that stuff was in development for a long time. And the stuff that you're doing is going to be the same way. So, what kind of things do you put in place to keep people engaged?
Yeah. So the way that we're doing it is building, and it's very much like that showroom model floor, or the showroom model that, say, like Elon Musk when he brought up the Cybertruck on stage. But we're taking it a step further than that, rather than just showing it off, because what we can actually start doing with those initial models is start making actual deliveries and monetize the craft. And while we're doing all of that, we're ensuring safety and testing all of the systems on it as well. So we've got I mentioned the sandbox routes. So we set those up, start doing deliveries, start running routes, and continuing to iterate. That is one thing that's very, very difficult to do in the aviation industry. This is why, because I mentioned again that this is not an aircraft. It is more like a hovercraft. We are able to move at a much faster pace when we try to integrate systems that are off the shelf and get us to market. And it's almost like the same model. maybe this isn't the best analogy, but it's like the model that that Tesla was trying to use when implementing, or when they're still trying to implement autonomous, fully autonomous driving. You can continue to upgrade the software on board. You have the systems and continue to upgrade it and modify it, have better and better systems that are safer and safer. Whereas in the aviation industry, if you want to include new systems or new software packages, you need to go through a very intense certification process. And if you want to pull, for example, sort of an example is if you want to put together a new aircraft and get a new aircraft certified by the regulatory bodies, that can take you 7 to 10 years. If you look at some of the urban air mobility companies, which is that the certification process has almost fully ground that market to a stop, or it's slowed it down dramatically. So this is one thing that we're absolutely focused on, is making sure that we stay out of that realm.
So was it last year, 2 years ago? There was like 20 ships off of every coast. There's a ton of goods on them. Who knows what was on there? Everyone's Christmas presents, whatever. Does having flying ship in the realm of this fix any of that? I know you talked about just how the logistics aspect of that, like, is that how we could see the consumers' goods getting to us easier? Like, how do you see that roadblock that was out there before? Is that anything that can be fixed by you guys, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, Zach, I think yes, we can definitely have an impact on that, because the way a lot of the goods travel are through from one major port to another, and our objective is to create more of a distributed logistics network, so that we don't run into those, the traditional like spoke and hub. If one of those nodes gets congested or blocked up, it can have an impact on all of them. If it's more of a like a system where it's almost like the road system, where if you have 8 different ways to get to your house, it's not as big of a deal as if you just lived on a road with one way in and one way out. So we're trying to create alternatives, and so that does solve it at least alleviates some of the congestion on those ports. And not only that, I mentioned the I-95 corridor. Imagine if we could start taking trucks, those tractor trailers, off of the I-95 corridor and going down from Boston all the way down to Miami and all points in between. That's another thing that we intend to tackle with this.
In that same kind of frame, our truck drivers, our ports, do they hate you? Do they hate what you're doing? Do they look at you as like, this guy's killing what we've built? Because I could see them potentially like, we don't want these truck drivers off the road. We want this. Like, how do they interact with you, or what are those conversations been like?
Yeah, we haven't had, and let's see what happens in the near future. But we haven't had a ton of pushback from some of those sectors. We've heard mentionings of some unions that are not thrilled about this about autonomous systems. Period. We're not eliminating jobs. We're just changing the way that those jobs look like. Right now, we've got one or two humans in the loop at all times when our craft are in operations, and we do not anticipate that to change anytime in the near future. So we see that the way that those jobs are, just the type of jobs are changing, but it's almost like a 1-for-1 type of changeover. And then we're also looking at regions like Alaska right now. We've got some partners in Alaska, and they're looking at this as a job creation opportunity, where you've got operators that are bringing in fresh food to areas, because I've heard of cases where in the North Slope of Alaska, it's $30 for 1 gallon of milk. $30 for a gallon of milk, and they don't. There's a joke that the only fresh fruit that you can buy at the grocery store are onions, because it's just hard to get these goods in enough. So if we again can open up that market, bring in these time sensitive, price critical goods to the region, and allow people to operate the craft and do the loading and unloading, that it could just be a job creator. That's how we're seeing it.
In terms of production, so are you all manufacturing that? Are you just are you sourcing it and then putting it together? What's your model there in terms of? I would assume that you're probably have found or identified a source for batteries and that type of technology. Talk about the production and how that's happening.
Yeah, Tim, we've got an assembly and test production model. So there's already a lot of manufacturing capacity out there. And so we were to set up a greenfield production site and started purchasing autoclaves and all of the equipment and training up the staff. It would take a long time, but fortunately, there's a lot of manufacturing capacity that's out there that we can leverage, and we do have some supply chain executives on our team that are fantastic, that have established a really good production model. But with that said, we're actually still identifying final assembly locations. Right now, we're leveraging our suppliers for that, but we're looking at different locations right now.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
So first time real business for you, as I think you said, you're at 757 Accelerate, going through that. Like, what's the goal of being in a program like that?
This, we're on the 757 Accelerate has been a fantastic organization, bringing in some additional resources, connecting us with, I guess, it's almost like, it's a program that teaches a startup how to do everything along the way to successfully go through, capital raising and scaling and everything like that. So it is absolutely fantastic being around some of these experts. And I think, we went into this not knowing how good it could be, but that we have been really impressed with the level of sophistication that the mentors and that the coordinators and everybody in the program, has just been throughout the course of this. So I think that, it's just filling in those gaps that we might not even see, and ensuring that we're positioned right for the market. And the other thing that doesn't hurt is we're right outside the world's largest maritime port, right? So location has been very good for us.
Yeah, in terms of that, so if you're able to set up a hub here, test port here, like from the current technologies that you're looking at, what would be your radius, like from here to Baltimore, or how far would you be able to fly with the current vessels that you have?
So we've got with the larger versions, they're going to be able to get a range of 1,000 nautical miles. With the smaller, I'll call them the mid-sized versions, you're limited to between 200 and 300 nautical miles. And I don't know how far that is to Baltimore from here.
That's got to be pretty close.
Yeah.
What's a nautical mile, like crow's way? Is that what that is? Just like
it's like a mile times what is 1.2, something like that.
Yeah, it's like it's some crazy thing. 1 point, like Yeah.
Why is everything got to be so difficult? Like, why can't we have one thing? Like, come on,
Right.
like this is obnoxious, you know? Like,
Yeah,
sitting here,
I
you
want to say
know,
it's like 1.15 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
who decided to make this so difficult on everyone? I mean, it was probably Americans, actually. We probably created
Yeah.
our own system. That's probably what it is. I bet. You know what? I blame us. I got it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, what? So like, what kind of timelines have you imposed on yourself that you're hoping to meet or exceed?
Yeah, so we're targeting in around a year's time. I don't want to say something publicly then, but we've got the major suppliers all spooled up right now for a 20-foot version that it's going to be going on. That's going to be doing demos, and not only just demos, but doing those sandbox runs in the Caribbean. We've also got a lot of demand we're being pulled towards Alaska quite a bit, and in the Mediterranean. So we're prioritizing a couple things right now. And then, of course, the military is always talking to us at the moment. But we can within 1 year, you will see something that will hopefully capture your attention, Tim.
Well, I mean, it's what you're trying to do, and not even trying. What you are doing, it is really difficult. There's so many, like all the logistical component, like everything from what type of composite material, what type of batteries, where you're manufacturing, and then you have to have all the support, logistical support that you need where you're flying to and from. I mean, like I'm assuming that you can't use a traditional airport, so you have to have that. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts that you all have to experience. So, like for the first, in your words, true startup that you're taking on, you really picked it's a difficult one to navigate. So, my
Yeah, why
gosh,
didn't you
I think
just try and get the hoverboard out there? I mean, come on. Like, did you not watch Back to the Future as a kid? Did you not want to be like Marty McFly? I mean, that would have been a heck of a lot easier, I think. Come on, man.
Probably, yeah. No,
yeah.
We're gonna have flying ships before hoverboards. I mean, this is obnoxious. This makes me so angry.
Yeah, it is. It's super exciting, and I mean, if there's one industry that deserves a delay and self-imposed timelines, I mean, this certainly would be one. You have so many factors that you do not have control of. That
So many,
I mean,
yeah.
it's ridiculously complicated. So, dude, ton of credit to you and your team for trying to tackle such a complex industry, but it's ripe for disruption.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the one thing you can kind of keep coming back to is the demand is clearly there. You could lower that cost for getting the time critical, price sensitive goods out there.
I mean, I would imagine that once fast forward 5 years from now, when this is just something that you see every day, where people are going to have a conversation like, man, do you remember back in the day where we used to have to ship this stuff in and have to wait a week for it to arrive? I mean, I would imagine that those are types of conversations that will happen in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So you guys have a ton of commitments from potential customers out there. How do you ensure that those customers, those commitments actually become customers? And I mean, Tim talked about, trying to keep them excited about it and stuff like that, and making sure that they stay there, but making sure that, these commitments actually become cold hard cash and real customers when that time in the future that we don't want to say happens.
Yeah. So we've got a customer that is actually going to be, we've got a couple of customers that are actually going to be owning and operating the craft with us. We're not going to compete directly with them, right? So we're going to be running those those sandbox routes on their behalf. So these are their deliveries.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's almost like the like Frito-Lay and Pepsi with the Cyber Semi or the Tesla Semi. You know, what I mean, like they're out there running the routes, doing their thing, but yeah, it's just not the Semi is not mass produced yet.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've learned two things today. The other thing is it going to be called Flying Ship, or like, are you guys going to have a different name for it? Like a crazy name that this thing is just flying around.
Yeah, we've got a couple names that they're already, and to me they're a little bit boring. But so if you guys have a cooler name, but yeah,
well, what's boring? Can you tell us what's
naming
boring? The regional and inter-island versions, the Coastal Express.
Those are the names?
Yeah.
I agree. Those are boring.
Well, help me out here. I'm the engineer, not the marketing guy. So
why are so many planes named at? Oh, sorry, Tim. Why are so many planes just weird names? Like what'd you call it? A380 or the Caspian Sea Monster? I mean, that's kind of cool. You should call it something like this. This is the Caspian Sea.
You can't name it after something from Russia. You got to
but you can come up with something ridiculous like that, like the river. I don't know, something. I mean, you can have fun with it, you know.
The river serpent. Yeah, I don't know.
The Loch Ness monster. They finally found it.
All that stuff's so hard. But I mean, you think about it. I mean, that's naming anything is so difficult.
Well, I think the shorter the better. The easier to run off, someone's tongue is easier. Something that's so long can be a very difficult thing, even for them just to remember to go Google it. But there's how many different words are there that are actually available that you can do anything with now too? I mean, that becomes a challenge. And yeah, because like the Navy vessels, they name those after cities and stuff like that, I guess, and famous people. I don't know, maybe there's
presidents. Yeah.
Well, and you know what they do, and I'm in an industry that everybody wants to name something an abbreviation or acronym, and
please don't.
There's no way. Or putting like a number, like an A380. What if I named this the 216 MLR? It's like,
I was listening to something the other night, Tim will like this. I know he knows this, but someone asked Elon Musk the pronunciation of his child's name. I guess there's one that has a really funky name or something like that.
Oh,
and there's so there's like 3 parts to it, and the last one is literally just it's named after his favorite plane or something like that. Like the B-22 or something like that.
SR-71, yeah.
SR-71, yeah. I thought that was funny.
SR-71 is pretty badass.
It is a really cool plane.
And the SR-71 is named after, it's a number and a letter and hyphenated with a number. So maybe there is hope. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. What did the first SpaceX, what are they? The first test craft was what, Starhopper or whatever, and that was I mean, that's kind of interesting. And then Starship is that thing's just bananas altogether. I mean,
what's the name of their internet? What's that thing called?
Starlink.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll think of something at some point in the next in the upcoming future, and I'll let you know. And the coastal device, it will be better than the coastal whatever majig you said. So
please help me out.
Yeah, anybody that's listening, we start the contest here. You can we'll figure out some sort of way to reward whoever comes up with a super cool name.
Yeah,
I'll give you a free copy of my book if you
Yeah, it is. Naming anything like that is extremely difficult, and like even in the craft beer industry, like the names that they come up with for. I mean, I think that any hops, IPA, I mean, like any of those beers, man, like I don't even know how they continue to come up with new names.
And pretty rad names. They're very unique and cool. Yeah. Steal a name from a beer company. Let's just do that. It'll work.
I know, because normally they have nothing to do with beer or hops or anything like that. They're just like Devil's Backbone. That's pretty cool, but what does it have to do with beer? So
it's true. Sure, there's a meaning somewhere. So what's something you want to talk about that we haven't talked about?
You know what? I don't know, guys. The weather, maybe we can talk about the weather. I like that a lot.
How's the weather going to
Yeah.
affect these bad boys?
The weather does it does. I mean, the smaller versions have weather limitations as you scale up. They do not. So, with the larger versions that I talked about, that one that can carry 6,000 pounds, 1,000 nautical miles, we can fly over take off out of Sea State 3, fly over Sea State 5, and land in Sea State 4, which means we can operate in 90% of all global sea conditions.
Yeah, I was at the week before. I was at the Advanced Air Mobility Expo that they had down here, and so one of the things that I had learned, and I'm curious your take, especially since you land on sea and on water. Like I didn't realize that like one of the things that they had to consider and they have to pay attention to is in the air you have bird strikes, but landing on sea you have whale. You could potentially hit a whale. So like what type of things do you have to put in place to avoid and prevent that from happening?
Yeah. So in fact, there's a huge, I think it's called the right whale conservancy. There's a number of organizations that are out there actively protecting whales, and whales get hit by large ships all the time. And in fact, you can see some really sad videos of like ships coming in, and there's like whales stuck to the front of them, and and just as they're traversing the ocean, they just knock right into one. So because we're out of operations, we're above the water for 95% of the operations of the craft, we're actually a lot safer for those marine mammals and other now obviously birds we still worry about bird strikes, and that is an issue. Again, this is one of the things that our artificial intelligence partners are focused on, and we are as well, but in using their system. So being able to navigate and to make sure whether there's a person on board or not, these are still issues that mariners have to deal with.
Well, because what does an airport do? They just fire off guns a lot, something like that, to try and get rid of the
dogs.
birds.
Some of them will have. I'm sure they've got. They used to have dogs, and some of them will actually used to hire those guys with hawks to scare birds away. There's probably some.
I would just wonder if like you could have something on the devices on the vessels that could just chirp at them. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it could be something as simple as that.
Speak bird.
Put some deer horns on there, like you put on your front bumper. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting, but it was something I had never even thought of or considered, but makes total sense.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of different names for the device. And I think the letter V should be the first letter. I don't know what to go after it, but for some reason, because of the word vessel, that seemed interesting to me. So a word with V in there.
See, I thought a military variant would like a cool one would be the Marauder. But everybody's like, no, you can't name it the Marauder. That's sounds violent, but I'm like, it's a military version, so it's got to be tough and manly.
Okay, tough and badass. Okay, gotcha. Well, there's that show Boys, and the V is the thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, the V is like the potent thing. I don't know. We'll figure out something for you.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that we'll make sure, and we didn't get a chance to show it. You sent us a couple of video clips. We'll make sure that we put those in the show notes, or maybe we can edit that in after the show so that people can take a look. It's really neat what you're able to do. So when you're able to see a visual aspect of what it is that you're doing, everything then makes sense. And we'll make sure that we add that to the show notes at a minimum. But flyingship.co, you guys got some really cool stuff. I wish you the very, very best. You are not. Again, you did not pick something easy to take on. That is pretty impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on. Love this podcast. So glad to be able to join you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.